welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. If we've not met before, my name is Hannah Wilson. I am the co-founder and director of a company called The Belonging Effect. We are a DEIB training provider. And I'm delighted to be co-hosting tonight's webinar with Emma Slade Edmondson to find out all about her new book. And we've got lots of people, so we've got quite a packed agenda of different people who are going to be speaking to you tonight about the idea of mixed race identities, but also what this looks like and feels like within the school context, thinking about where the book has been positioned. So I'm going to hand over to my co-host, Louise, just to introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Louise John Bocas Cooper. So I'm a head teacher in a secondary school, but I also am the co-founder of MixEd, which is a platform for people who are mixed heritage, mixed race identity in education. So very happy to see you all here today.
And great to have you here. And we will do lots of signposting post the webinar with links out to the various organisations. So the star of the show tonight is Emma. And Emma and I met serendipitously at a book event in Bath, where I live, on another book that she wrote. So she has gone through podcasting and writing books for adults. And I was that annoying person in the audience who asked her the question about what about the children and what about schools? And her answer was, don't worry, I've got a book coming out. And hence why we are here. So, Emma, it's fab to have you here. Do you want to just share the story of who you are, what you do, and how you ended up becoming a podcaster and an author?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me and for hosting this conversation tonight. So as Hannah was saying, we met because I wrote another book called The Half of It, which is also about the mixed race experience. And how I came to write that book was essentially that I launched a podcast in 2020 during COVID. Let us take ourselves back there briefly for a moment, if we can bear it. And I launched this podcast with my friend Nicola Cran, and we had decided, having met and spent our first meeting talking exclusively about the experience of being mixed race, even though she's from the US and I'm from the UK, and our mixed heritage is very, very different. Nicole being mixed Ghanaian Filipino and myself being mixed British Jamaican. And we immediately came up with the idea of doing a podcast, which we ended up launching to great effect. And to be honest, to more sort of success than we had really expected and prepared for, in that it really kind of took us by storm how celebrities were wanting to come onto this podcast, and everybody we asked immediately said yes. And often they said, you know what, I've been waiting my entire life for someone to ask me about this, and they've never asked me. So yes, I'm coming, and yes, I'm ready, and yes, I've got lots to say. And that sort of really reaffirmed for me that this was a conversation that needed to be had in a much broader capacity, and, you know, in a nuanced way, and also in a way that was relatable and accessible for people. I think the only place I could find this dialogue really until I started the podcast was in journals, and sort of very academic context. And even then, I still felt it was kind of not
For you.
not as in depth as I would like. So yeah, so we launched the podcast, and that went very well. We've done 6 seasons of the podcast, and then we're commissioned to write the half of it, which I also wrote with Nicole, which is a book for adults, exploring the mixed experience, very, very different from mixed. And I was constantly asked actually by parents if there was any resources I could recommend for children, or indeed for the parents themselves. And so in the end, yeah, I was approached by my incredible editor, Kate from Macmillan, and I thought, well, yeah, people are asking for it, so I'll write it. So that's how it came to be.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I'm going to hand over now to Louise to have a conversation with you, really, to tease that out a little bit further. So, Louise, over to you.
Hello. No, I'm really, really excited about this. So I've got my book here. You might see there's lots of post-it notes here. So I'm not going to refer to all of these, But I know it's already been referred to as the book that certain people or you would have wanted as a child as well. And that's certainly something that resonated with me completely. Because I don't think it's something that was really talked about at certain, no, I'm middle-aged, but it was something that was just completely kept out of the conversation. So I completely appreciate you writing this book. And I've already said to my daughter, after I've taken all the post-it notes out, I will be giving you this book because you need to read it. So thank you so much for having me on. So what inspired you to write the book at this time of your life would be my first question.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, to be honest, it's sort of a natural progression of the journey that I've been on with this subject matter. You know, having done the podcast, I've had hundreds and hundreds of conversations with people from kind of all over the world now, from lots of different backgrounds, you know, and from lots of different professions, be it, you know, actors, sportsmen and women, historians, psychologists. And I think that going through that journey and having those conversations, it just became so stark as to how, if we as adults are grappling with this and, you know, finding it challenging, not having the language, you know, not necessarily knowing where to turn to have the conversations, but also what's the right way to dig into the subject matter, and finding pushback in some areas, particularly, you know, in the media or online, when we do want to say, you know what, we also have an experience that's quite specific and unique, and we need to be able to discuss it. If we were struggling with that as adults, I realized we needed desperately something for children.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think if I'd have had this book younger, it would have started my sort of experience of trying to find my identity and where I felt comfortable. So just going back to your own sort of upbringing and how you've come on this journey, what moment in your life growing up really shaped your understanding of your identity, or not, maybe? So where are the defining moments in your life, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that there was one specific moment. To give a bit of context, I grew up with, and I don't know, for those of you who've read the book, I don't want to like rehash things for you, but I grew up in a predominantly white environment, and actually my parents are both white, and my brothers are white, and so I had quite a specific experience in that way. Actually, I thought it was kind of unique as I was growing up. But then when I started doing my podcast, I found that it possibly wasn't as, as unique as I had thought. But I do think that that experience kind of shaped my idea around, you know, whether I was allowed to talk about this subject, not because my parents didn't let me talk about it, but just simply probably because they didn't know how to introduce the conversation. And they didn't have the tools to help me explore that myself. And I think that was, you know, something that profoundly shaped my awareness of this idea that there was something there that I wanted to talk about and explore, and that was challenging, but I didn't have anywhere to do that. Um, Other things, like the other day, I was reminded that when I was kind of 13, 14, a friend of mine, a male friend of mine, said to me, "Oh, you know what? It's kind of cool that you're you're quite balanced. You're okay. You're not crazy." And at the time, I didn't have any context or understanding from where that was coming from. Although he did elaborate and say, you know, most of the time mixed girls are crazy because I think they're confused um, about who they are. And I think, you know, there's lots of moments throughout growing up where you get those messages given to you, and that you know, I remember that moment vividly. I remember where I was, I remember where we were going. um and so these things, they stick with you. There's not one specific moment. But now that I've done all this research, this reading, this writing, indeed, I know that this is all wrapped up in, like these stereotypes of mixed girls, and, how we even perhaps tied up in the trope of the tragic mulatto, and how we're struggling with this kind of fight of the two halves of ourselves, and and that becomes something that's like inherent in your personality somehow, and the way that you then move through the world, and the way you feel about yourself, and the negativity that sort of grows. And now that I have all of this context, I sort of understand how the world met me in a much better way. Um, so anyway, sorry, that was a really long answer, and possibly not also the very specific one that you were looking for.
No, it's completely right. And the thing that really struck me then was your parents, because the book is excellent for parents to work through with their children. And I think that's a toolkit for parents as well, who maybe are struggling on how to talk to their children. So I think, those exercises that you can do in the book are absolutely fantastic. Um, so you mentioned before about how many people from different spheres of life that you've come into contact with, and that's something else. I guess coming at it from an education side of view, all of the footballers, the pop stars, or whoever you mentioned, have all been to school. So I can talk about experience from the school base, but how do you also feel the experiences differed across different environments for you and the people that you've come across, or school, work in different countries, for example?
Yeah. So in different countries, one of the things that I realized right away, when the first time I went to Jamaica, actually was as an adult, and I think I say this in the book, but when I came back, my husband, he said, "I've never seen you so relaxed. You're so relaxed." Um, and we didn't, pinpoint exactly why I was so relaxed, but I think one of the things is probably that, in Jamaica, everyone is mixed. Everyone's considered to be mixed, and it's just a very normal expectation and thing. So it's very different to being in the UK, where, like, I think we have quite a need to specify and be a bit more hung up on that sort of identification, but often without any clarification of what that mixedness means, or what specific mix that heritage might be. Um, so yeah, I think that was very different, and I obviously found that really welcoming and beautiful as an experience. In terms of what were the other.
Yeah, just sort of how do you think experience differs across different environments? So, for example, when you were a child growing up in school compared to maybe in the workplace, do you think there was a difference in there? Did you find school difficult to navigate?
Yeah, I think school is, oftentimes difficult to navigate for various different reasons, but I definitely think that being mixed, and I've written about this, brings up all these challenges in regards to how people see you, but how you see yourself is different, and how people try to force their idea of who you are on you. And I think that, that happens quite a lot in school anyway. But
Mm.
it's quite a specific thing when you're mixed. You seem to get a lot of pushback when you are defining yourself. And yeah, I definitely experienced that in school. Um, I think particularly for me, I experienced this idea that, I wasn't necessarily black enough for the black children, and I certainly wasn't white. Um, and that's something that I've heard again and again come up. And I think, when you're a young child trying to find your sense of self and your sense of belonging, that's a really challenging thing to have to deal with. But it's also challenging to not have anywhere to talk about that, or to not know that that's something other people are going through. So yeah, I really wanted to, A, give that sense of visibility and reflection in the book, but also that idea that, this is a conversation and we can bring it up in certain ways, and it's a normal conversation to have. And we should normalize it. So, but also that children should have the agency to be able to describe themselves in the way that they see themselves, in the way that they've learned themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Do you think conversations around mixed race identity are changing now? Do you think there is more awareness? Are you hopeful?
Yeah, I definitely am. I think, when I first started the podcast, there was nothing. And it felt very stark. I felt like the podcast was kind of it, apart from, as I said, like academic journals and that kind of thing. And then now I feel that we've seen a lot of resources spring up since then. There are lot more adult books. I don't think there are. I'm not really aware of any other children's books specifically focused on this, um, in this way. But yeah, there are certainly. I have, quite a few author friends who've written books about this subject. So I'm really happy to see that, because I think that even us as adults need to be educating ourselves about our own experiences in order to then be able to pass that on and be, caregivers and educators and in supporting our young people in ways that are useful, because we have a better understanding of ourselves and the experiences we've been through. So that I feel is really hopeful. And even seeing more mixed race storytelling in the media, I think is something that I've noticed. I still think it's a bit shallower than I would like. I think it's often representation.
I was going to lead on to my next question. I've got a bit of a bugbear at the moment that mixed raceness is sometimes more palatable. And so I've got a little game in my house where whenever we see an advert with a family, I'll go, oh, mixed race family, because they've got these beautiful children. I mean, it's kind of like the poster family now. And it really winds me up. So I'll say it. And then my husband and my daughter have started to go, oh, mixed race family. And they're noticing it too. That seems to be the sort of, and again, it's that palatability. So again, do you think media representation is going in the right direction as well?
As I say, I think that we see more mixed race people, but we don't see the nuance or have the nuance of their stories. Um, and that grates on me too. I feel like that's often missed. And for example, I don't know if anyone's seen the film I think it's just won a number of awards, but the film, I think it's called One Battle After Another, with Leonardo DiCaprio. Essentially, the story is centered around a mixed race character and what it means to have interracial relationships and for mixed people to be in the world when it comes to white supremacy and so on. And I watched this film and I thought, they've not once asked this central character what her experience of being mixed is. They've not given any room in the script for her to express that. And there's a whole film. The whole film is about her and, how her being mixed affects the world around her and vice versa. And there's that at no point have they given space for her to explain her own experience. And I thought that was really telling. And I thought that was the only true reflection of the mixed experience, is that we don't get asked and we don't have room to talk about that and explain that and share that.
Yeah, it's almost as if we're more present, but we're still not there. So I completely agree with you there. So I think I'm coming to the end. So I've got two more questions. So what do you wish more people understood about navigating multiple cultures? It's not easy.
Yeah. What do I wish? What's the one thing that I wish people understood? I suppose it goes back to that point around, we, I think we often get asked to choose, or we often get, and this happens from a very young age, whether it's overtly or, you know, covertly, and perhaps without our peers knowing what they're doing. And I think the one thing that I would like people to understand is that's not what it is. Like, we are both, and we should have the agency to be able to put that forward into the world, and describe ourselves and live truly in that way without being accused of it being deceitful by one group or another, which I think can often come up. And I think if people better understood the experience, that accusation would happen less.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's really nicely put. Thank you. So, last one. What's the one message from the book you would want to share in a single sentence before we go on for more conversations?
Gosh, Louise, you're really like testing me with these questions.
It's what we do. It's what we
Yeah.
do.
Um,
One single message from the book.
I think the most important message is that it's up to you how you define yourself, and you have the agency to take as long as you need exploring your heritage, yourself, and your identity to be able to do that. And if that description, that feeling of who you are changes every day, every month, every year, for the rest of your life, that's fine. But it's up to you to be able to put that forward into the world.
Oh, lovely. It's been lovely to chat to you. Thank you so much. I'll hand you back to Hannah.
Thank
Love
you.
it. Thank you both. Just a really open, honest. I saw your LinkedIn post yesterday, Emma, about like being more and more vulnerable and open about these conversations and sharing more and more of yourself, particularly professionally. So thank you just for the honesty and the candor there. We're going to move on to your publishers to hear a little bit about why Claire and Chenny were so excited, and Pam Millen sort of backed the book. So Claire and Chenny, do you want to join me and introduce yourselves? You might need to unmute so we can hear you.
Yes, that little trick.
Hello, Claire.
Hi, everybody. So I'm really delighted to be speaking here today on behalf of Emma's team at Macmillan Children's Books. We are very, very proud to have brought Mixed onto bookshelves last month in February. And I'd want to share, to start with, one piece of feedback that we've had, which I think sums up the book brilliantly. And it is that this book is vitally needed. And for us to hear that from a librarian is really, really exciting. We know that Emma has given us the right book here. And we've also had some feedback over the last couple of weeks from some young people that, Emma, I hope you won't mind me sharing as well. So this is from two girls. We loved reading Mixed. It made us feel less alone and able to celebrate who we are. We're in different year groups, so we didn't know each other before we read Mixed. And you've already helped us start finding a mixed race community, even in our very white school. And their librarian also commented, telling us what a pleasure it's been to see the impact the book has had on her readers and the confidence it's helped them develop in terms of discussing their own identities. And for me personally, I'm a publicist, and I can't wait to speak this summer at the School Librarian Conference, and then in the autumn at the Youth Librarians Conference, and stand at the front of our stand with this book and talking to every single professional who goes past me about why this book might work very well in their school. Because we here at Macmillan Children's Books and Pam Macmillan, we really recognise the role of professional librarians and teachers in finding the right book for every child in their community, be that in the classroom, in the library, or in the public library. So to dial back quite a long way to our editorial director, Kate Augustin, who would be doing this spot, but actually she's on maternity leave at the moment. But when Kate heard Emma speak at an event about her adult book, she immediately knew that she wanted to work with her on a special book for children. And it felt a very much needed book. And everyone here at PanMac, beyond the children's team as well, could really see the value and the potential in Mixed, a book which explores the experience of growing up mixed race. And in Mixed, we think what we've done with Emma is succeeded in creating a truly empowering and very positive guide, showing how mixed race people, how to make a space for themselves in the binary world that we all live in. And crucially, how to frame conversations about themselves, who they are, and their identities with friends, family, and beyond. And as Louise has said, it's really a guide for parents and carers too. And it's a book to help them lead conversations which they might not know they need to have with the children or the child in their care. There is nothing else like it in the children's book market at the moment. And we are so excited about the potential that this book and Emma's own experiences that she's put into the book really has to make a difference to children all over this country and beyond. I could go on and on talking about this, but I would like to say thank you very much to Hannah for the opportunity today and for Emma giving us this book that we can shout about.
Thank you so much, Claire. Emma, do you want to say anything back to your publisher? Go for it. Go for it.
I just wanted to say thank you. That was so lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Cheney, did you want to jump in and talk a little bit about the kind of the resources, the kind of the questions that you've put together to go with the book?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't expecting to speak.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm happy to. But yes, so we've put together some discussion notes, which are hopefully a jumping off point for people who've read the book, but also for people who haven't read the book yet. And to be used in classrooms or, with families that they can have those conversations. Because as everyone else has said, like as a mixed race person who grew up in a white household, it's not something that is always. It's not an easy conversation and it's hard to know how to come into it. So I think having, like something that can help guide you is really important. And, there are conversations in classrooms that, if you're a teacher that's not of the same race, that it's difficult to start those off. So I hope that that's what those discussion notes can help to do.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you. And I've got it as a PDF, so I will ping it out to everybody post the event as well. So sorry to put you on the spot there. And keeping our eye on some of the reviews that are coming in. Anyone who has bought the book, read the book, please put a review about it. That is how books sell. I just lifted one of the reviews from Amazon, which gives you 5 stars, Emma, and really talks about actually the wide, diverse audience for this book and how it's going to help so many different stakeholders enter the conversation and have conversations about things that do matter, but we often don't have the language to have those conversations as well. So I just wanted to share a little bit of the love and affirmation you're getting there. Every parent of a mixed race child needs to buy this book was the kind of the final sentence from that parent. So we're going to move on to a panel with some educators, and we are going to leave some time for Q&A. So do start putting questions in the chat. But I'm delighted to be joined by 3 people who I love and respect, who do brilliant work across the education sector.
Yeah.
Andy, Benny, and Dominique. So I'm going to ask each of them first of all to introduce themselves. So Andy, would you like to tell everyone who you are, where you are, what you do?
Hi everyone, so my name is Andy Moffat and I'm a PD lead at Excelsior Mat in Birmingham and assistant head at the Meadows School in Birmingham. And I do know outsiders as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Benny, do you want to jump in next?
Sure, I'm the co-founder of The Belonging Effect, independent consultant, former deputy head teacher, writer and mother to 2 adopted mixed race children.
Thank you, Benny. And Dominique?
Hi everyone. I'm an associate for the Belonging Effect. I'm former senior leader for a long, long time and a consultant as well, education consultant and EDI consultant, particularly around anti-racism.
Fantastic. It's great to have you all here. So the first question I want to ask you all, having read the book, are like, what are your thoughts and how, like, Andy, thinking about your work with No Outsiders, particularly in the kind of the primary sector, what were your thoughts about how this book's going to help educators in the primary phase?
I have read the book. In fact, look, it's very well thumbed here. There's lots of pages turned down. I just want to thank Emma, first of all. My sister is mixed race, and for the first 40 years of our life, we never talked about it, and, she was adopted in the 1970s to a white family and went to 100% white British school. And we never talked about it because we never thought, just like you've said, Emma, our parents, and me included, didn't have the resources or the skills or the knowledge, or it never came up, because it just never didn't think about it. And it wasn't until I went to university and met other people who are mixed race and, oh, my sister's like you. And they were like, oh, and I remember them saying, oh, what's that like in a white family? And I said, oh, she's fine. And I remember it was someone saying, have you ever asked her? And I asked her, and that all came out. So this book, honestly, is just fantastic, and I'm giving it to my sister, who, by the way, has given me permission to share that story, and I'm looking forward to her reading that and chatting with her. So in terms of No Outsiders, it's perfect for me. This is because, I go around schools, talking with young children, reception year one, about beautiful black skin, beautiful brown skin, beautiful white skin, and when you come back to you, I'll talk about some books that I use, picture books that will really support this kind of work.
Fantastic. Thank you, Andy. Dominique, how about you then, as an educator, but also as a mixed race woman? How did you find it reading it?
Yeah, I found it really powerful. I found it quite emotional, I think, because I grew up in an all-white town as a mixed heritage child. We were the only family of color in the town, and so that was a challenge. And just if I'd had a book like this, just as Emma was saying earlier, then I think it would have been quite life-changing around my identity. So yeah, I really enjoyed the book. I can see it being used in really practical ways. I'm an English teacher as well, so I can already, when I was reading it, I was going, oh, and I'll do that exercise with students, and I do this, and that's what I was thinking while reading it.
Love that, Don. Thank you. And I'll come back to you about the language in a moment. I've got a question for you about the language. And Benny, like reading it with your multiple hats on here, as an educator, as a diversity in the curriculum specialist, but also as an adopted parent, what came up for you as you read it?
I think it was a bit of a wake-up call, actually, because I thought I was really conscious of what it meant to have a mixed race identity. And, the conversations you have when you're adopting mixed race children are very much about how are you going to cater for their needs. But it often is siloed into how are you going to cater for their white bits and how are you going to cater for their black bits. And actually, it's that binary is just really unhelpful. And reading the book, I was just sort of, I think, woke up to some of the feelings that they might have growing older, but gave me some guidance as to how to have some of the conversations. They're too young to read the book at the moment, but I know my cousin's children who are also mixed heritage, who are old enough to tackle some of these issues. I'm passing it on as soon as this event is over because it's going to be invaluable. And yeah, just learning from voices as well, people who are talking from their own lived experience. That to me was brilliant.
Thank you, Benny. Andy, let me ask you a follow-up question about identity, because the No Outsiders scheme that hopefully educators on the call, parents on the call will know about, it is about identity and how identity is formed and shaped and how we explore it. How does race or mixed raceness come up in your kind of your No Outsiders lessons and the conversations you're having with primary age children?
Yeah, it comes up all the time because in the end, the whole point of Not Outsiders and schools doing this work is I want children to be proud of who they are. First of all, to know who they are, actually, explore who you are, to know who you are, and to be proud of who you are. And if you don't know who you are, that's okay as well. You can still be proud of yourself, and I want you to talk about this. I was really influenced by Liz Pemberton, the Black nursery manager. I met her comments and we chatted about this. And I love the way that she talks about in nursery getting children to paint on their hands and to mix colours to find the colour that they are, and to talk about it. And that's it. I want children to be that the bottom line is to be proud of who you are. Can I say very quickly one of the books that I use to talk about this?
Yeah, go for it.
Read a Crane Story. So first of all, there's great books, like one called That's Not Your Mama, I use in year 2, which is a bit like a sledgehammer really for this, because it's exactly what we're talking about. A white girl, black dad, white mum. People keep saying to her, "That's not your mum. That's not your mum." That's a really good way to introduce us. Why are they saying that? But actually, what I love doing, in year 4 was this book here, Read a Crane Story, which is about a clown who is red, but everyone's telling him he's blue. Now he draws blue, and everyone keeps telling him he's red because he's got a red jacket. And all through it's about him trying to find out who he is. And everyone keeps saying to him, you're red, but he keeps drawing blue. Now, in the end, it says, even with all our help and all his hard work, he couldn't get the hang of it. And we stop there and we talk about it. This is year 4. And I say, maybe we should tell him he's blue. Maybe he's just blue. Maybe he doesn't realise. Maybe we should tell him he's blue. Maybe we don't help him out. And then I pretend to think, and I go, I don't know, is it my job to tell someone who I think they are? It might help him. I don't know. Is it my job? And I say to a child, if I say, just tell me a minute, who knows who you are? Do you know who you are? Or do I know who you are? And they'll go, no, you don't know who I am. I say, no. I say, no, but what if you're wrong? What if you're confused? Well, listen to me, I know who you are. Is that okay? And I'll go, no. And I'll say, why not? And I'll say, because you don't know who I am. This is really confusing, children. I don't know what to do. Should we tell him he's blue or not? Then we have a conversation. So by doing this kind of conversation, I'm getting children, just to think about it. I haven't got the answers, actually. I'm never going to say to a child, you're this or you're that or you're that or you're that. But what I'm going to say is, in our class, we are all different, and that's fantastic. Tell me who you are, and I will accept you.
I love that, Andy. And to bounce off of that to you, Dominique, like the whole piece around language, we know can be really sensitive, really political. People often don't know what language to use. Do we say mixed race, dual heritage, biracial? Do you want to just talk about the language in the book, but also the language that you're supporting schools in navigating so they can actually have the conversations about mixed raceness?
Yeah, I think I just want to say firstly that I found it really respectful of Emma to talk about the variations of being mixed, because that doesn't always come out in other things I've read. So because I'm not mixed white, and I'm mixed from 2 different Asian cultures, and so I think that it was just really nice giving all the different examples of the way that people can be mixed in the book. Yeah, obviously what you've said is absolutely right. There are a lot of people who, including me, who are a bit uncomfortable about the term mixed race because of the fact that there is the recognition that race is a social construct, that there's very little biological evidence and fact in the concept of race. And so, and I like the fact that Emma alluded to that in the book and did, not in huge depth because it's for children, but did actually references. I thought that was really important, and that's why some people might be uncomfortable. I use the term mixed heritage, and I also like the fact that Emma talked about the fact that the word dual doesn't work, and why mixed is so important, because again, in my background, there are more than 2 heritages that emerge from my ancestry. So I think that's really powerful as well to talk about mixed or multiple heritage. In terms of some of the slurs and the discriminatory terms, it was interesting to see. I got called half caste a lot, mulatto, and one that was missing, I thought, was mongrel. Yeah, I got called mongrel a lot in the 1980s where I was growing up. But yeah, I wondered about how young children in primary school, how they might feel about those terms, and how we might work with them to understand what that meant, because they probably don't hear those terms anymore. They're so outdated. So what do we have to do to try and get them to understand how much harm that language caused to people of our generation, and also in order to prevent that being used again. So that's
Thanks,
just the
Dom.
thoughts I was having.
No, really powerful. Thank you. And coming to you, Benny, and thinking about representation and all the work you're doing around representation in the curriculum, particularly the English
Mm.
curriculum, particularly the library. I'm not sure if everyone on the call would know all the stats and all the problems and all the lack of. Like, just talk a little bit about how this book might fit into that wider conversation about the need for representation.
So we often talk about windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors, which is the work of Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop. And I think if you are mixed race or dual heritage, however you choose to define yourself, sometimes those mirrors and windows can be really complicated, because you don't know which bit of yourself is being mirrored and which bit of yourself is the window out to a different culture. Um, and I think it's really important for teachers and librarians to have a really good understanding of what representation of dual heritage actually looks like, not just in the curriculum, but in books themselves. We have at our fingertips many more resources now to find texts that really represent the entire fabric of humanity. And for a librarian or a teacher to be able to recommend books, fiction, non-fiction, otherwise, that's a powerful helping tool. And I think this is where this book comes in. And we've had examples of other books around self-confidence and identity. Marcus Rashford has been writing about his experiences. We know that Black and British has been turned into a book for kids. And I can see this book really kind of fitting in with this body of work that is suitable for young people who are able to question, who are erudite, who are inquiring, and who want to hear from people who are like them. For me, it should take front and center on new book displays, and it would be really great if librarians and teachers had resources to support the book. And I think the questions will be really helpful there as well, in order to how to talk about it, because unfortunately, there's still a real lack of understanding of all the nuances, as Emma was saying, in schools.
Thank you so much, Benny. I've got one more question for each of you. So, Andy, this is a tricky question, but I'm sure lots of people on the call are probably also wondering about it. How do white people talk about race and talk about mixed raceness? Like when you go in and do work in primary schools, I'm very conscious of who I am, and we do need to be part of the conversation. But just any advice to those who are racialized as white on the call about how to navigate these conversations?
Well, beware of our privilege, first of all, and just listen and ask questions. If you're not sure, we have to listen. My biggest journey, my biggest learning curve tonight as scholars is dialogue and listening. I haven't got all the answers, but I absolutely want to learn. I've got ideas, and if anyone doesn't like what I'm doing, I want you to tell me, and I'll listen, and we can discuss, and we can make it better. So my answer would be ask questions and listen, and be prepared to get it wrong.
Yeah, love that. Thank you, Auntie. Dom, your question, there's more awareness now around racism and anti-racism, but colorism isn't always talked about, thought about, considered, particularly within the kind of school environments. What if it's for the educators on the call, what should schools be thinking about when it comes to colorism?
Um, I think that it's something that has to be explicitly talked about and as part of teacher training. It's actually on the rise significantly, not just in the UK, but in America and other countries as well. So skin shade prejudice, colorism, and the other thing is that it's people get uncomfortable, I think, because often they see that it's global majority people themselves who are engaging in it. And so it's not as simple as the old-fashioned way of looking at racism. And so people are quite uncomfortable about actually recognizing it and having the language and the literacy to talk to young people about it. I do a lot of work with primary age children even around it, and I won't call it colorism, but we talk about skin shade and we talk about those things. And then with the older children then in secondary school, then we actually do talk about it, colorism and the history of it. That's really important. I always talk about it. I'm from the Indian subcontinent, or part of me is, and so I talk about the fact that the caste system in the Indian subcontinent, the Bollywood industry, all of these things, how they've contributed to this mindset around colorism, and get young people to understand that and why they're using this language. They don't even know why they're using it half the time.
Thank you, Dom. Thank you. And Benny, final question for you. Around the idea of the kind of the family conversations as an adopted parent, as a woman of colour, but a woman of colour who's adopted mixed race children, um, how do you go about having these conversations, and what support have you had along the journey about being the adopted parent of mixed race children? Your face is saying you haven't, but I'm just really curious.
I mean, bear in mind, it's a long and sad story about the conversations we had around adopting as two female adopters who are of different races themselves. So I'm South Asian and my partner is white. And it was you can't have a white child, you can't have a black and white child, you can't have a black child. And, it became this really crazy thing. And in the end, obviously, it all worked out. But we've made a real effort to talk to our young ones about the beauty of their heritage. So it's tricky. I think trickier for me, not being white or Black Caribbean. I can almost kind of give them the sense of their white heritage, having lived in it and been born in it. But I've had to work really hard to help them understand Black Caribbean heritage, and to understand representation. And we often point, out characters or pictures in books, and we think about the toys that we buy, and so it's a natural part of our conversation with our young ones. I don't think they have much of a sense of it yet. Even sort of their difference, they are surrounded by lots of children of different backgrounds, but it's never been something we've avoided, because it has to be tackled head on. It has to be part of their identity and not something to be ashamed of. And we've made that really clear. We'll often talk about it, and the advantages and just, yeah, the beauty of it.
Love it. Can I say a massive thank you to all three of you for joining us tonight and just for sharing your thoughts, reflections, advice. I'm going to move us into a Q&A, and I haven't had a chance to keep an eye on the chat. I'm hoping there's some questions in the chat. But if you are here and you've got a question you'd like to ask Emma primarily, or she might default it to one of the educators on the call, is there anyone who'd like to unmute or raise their virtual hand and ask a question directly to our author, Emma?
Don't be shy.
Or it might be feedback rather than a question as well.
Yeah, I would love feedback as well. I really enjoyed hearing your feedback just to the panel members, and also just to say to you, Andrew, I've actually never met another white brother of a mixed person. So I've met mixed people who told me, oh, my brothers and my sister also are white, but I've never actually met another brother. So I just thought it was so wonderful hearing your experience and how you've had that conversation at your age. It really moved me. And yeah, I'm delighted that this book sort of moved you to do that. I couldn't be more kind of thrilled about that. I think it's wonderful.
I love that. Maybe you two are going to stay in touch after this and connect up your siblings as well. I can see I've got a few hands appearing. Dom, jump in. What question do you have to pose?
It's feedback, because Emma said she would like some
Go for
feedback.
it. Go for it.
Yeah. So the thank you to the publishing company for sending me an extra copy to give to my friend. Her daughter, her children are of mixed heritage, and her daughter's 8 years old. She'd been reading it with her mum, and they've just absolutely, as a whole family, fallen in love with the book and the conversations it's opened up for them as a family that they've not had before. Mum's British Pakistani and dad's born in Trinidad, and they've just not really had those conversations before. And she said the little girl's actually given me her own feedback. She said it felt really special to see things in the book that have happened to me. And she loves reading, and she really does, but the book felt different because it brought me close to my family with all the conversations we've had. It explained new words. I really liked doing the exercises. We were doing them together as a family. She says, thank you for writing this book. It helped me know that I am unique. In all the hundreds of people in our family, my siblings and me are the only ones with the mix that we have. So you know,
Emma,
that's the impact
your
it's had
heart's
on a
full,
whole
isn't
Sharing
family.
it?
that, I feel like I might not get off this call in one piece. I feel really like emotional. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful to hear. I'm so happy.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Thanks, Dom, for gathering that and sharing that. Benny knows it'll be me crying before you, Emma, so don't worry. I'll start the crying wave in a minute. Thank you, Dom. Flo, you're next. Do you want to jump in? What's your comment or question or feedback? Bottom left to unmute. There you go.
It's kind of comment and feedback really, and just to say that I'm really excited that I've found this event and discovered this book, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I've just ordered it. I find actually I'm quite taken aback at how emotional I feel and actually how triggered I feel. I grew up with my white family, only the white side of my family, and I work in equalities and anti-racism. And often when I've read books, one of the things that I've often felt is, I get everyone else's story, but no one's got this story. And I was starting to feel like, am I the only person who grew up kind of cut off from a whole side of myself? So to realize that actually that is the experience of many others is a relief, but also just really thankful that someone's started to articulate it because I'm 53 and it's never been articulated in my life, and I never saw a place where I could. And just that, my white family, they're lovely people, love them to bits, but they have yet to come and ask me the question, what was it like for you? And that's still quite yeah, and even when I say it, I feel quite because it's quite a big thing. So if other children can be spared that, then this is a really good thing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope maybe you can pop this in the post. But I hope that when you receive it, it sort of gives you um as much as it gave me to write it. I think it is therapeutic, and I've had some adults come to the library sessions that were for children and parents, and they just came because they said, I'm coming for little me, and there wasn't anything at the time. And so I think I did write it to be readable for any age, and for us to be able to get something from it, and specifically so that parents could feel that they could really take something from. I do think it's pretty cool to read at any age, really.
Yeah, I feel like you're widening out your target audience for this book as well, Claire and Janie, like social care, social workers, people supporting adoptive processes. We've got parents in the call who are also psychotherapists and thinking about like how we navigate trauma and help young people sort of like navigate who they are. Like, I feel like it's getting broader and broader as the conversation continues. Flo, jump back in. I can see you've unmuted. Did you want
Yeah,
to
no,
say
I
that to
was
Emma?
just thinking that, what white parents need support. I was just thinking about my mother. She probably just didn't know or even realize, and I think still today, I'm a teacher as well, and I think sometimes just the white parents might think, well, it's just enough that I love my kids, and obviously they do. They love their kids. They want what's best. They advocate for their children well, but perhaps they've never really stopped to think, though, that there is a whole experience there that they just can't know about, and we want to know about our kids. But there's a whole experience that they just can't know by themselves. They need to read it somewhere else or hear from other people, and engage with their children to really know what that experience is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think you're absolutely right when it comes to white parents, that's key, but I don't think it's just white parents, because obviously when you have monoracial parents, they're actually never going to have the lived experience of being mixed. So in general, there is, I think, a lot of disconnect in regards to what parents automatically know that mixed children are potentially going through, grappling with, finding a challenge. So yeah, I think let's get all the parents into it.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of comments just in the chat. Angela, I'll bring you back in. Thank you. Not sure what happened there, but we've got some comments in the chat about colorism being so prevalent in schools, experiencing racism in our own homes, based on those different family dynamics. Like, there's quite a lot going on here about the journeys that people have walked on this call, and perhaps felt quite alone and quite unsupported at times as well. Angela, is everything working? Did you want to unmute and ask a question or share some feedback? Your hand was up before you got kicked out. Were you trying to work out your audio? No, you can't hear. Oh, sorry. Give us a shout in a minute if it's working. Going through the children, Benny's just disappeared. I'm conscious we're just about to run into being late as well. So we will begin to wrap it up. But Ruth, jump in. I can see your hands up. Did you want to ask a question or give some feedback?
I just wanted to say a few things. The book is brilliant. I got my copy. I'm working my way through it. I've got two mixed heritage daughters, but they're both grown up now. One's 31, one's 28. And something like this would have been amazing when they were younger. My husband's South Asian, so my children are not the traditional mix, but people sometimes think it just refers to white and black. But they obviously had lots of different experiences on how they were experiencing being mixed, both from the South Asian side of our family and from other people. So they were never perceived as white. They were always asked as they were growing up, what are you? Wherever they went, especially by boys, that would be the first question. What are you? What are you? And to have that book where that is in there so that they would know, oh, it's not just me that's asked this. And, they went through lots of different kind of stages of understanding their identity. So yeah, it's a brilliant book. One of the things I was thinking though, in terms of having it's great support for parents. I would use it as a teacher, definitely. But I'm just conscious as to whether some teachers will be nervous about using it, because conversations about race are so what's the word? Often often the ones that are avoided we don't talk about that. And whether you've got a strategy of like supporting schools with how they're going to talk about it, and also whether parents you might get pushback if a school discusses a child's mixed identity with a child whose parents isn't keen, perhaps, because I know of a white parent of a mixed race child who refuses to discuss anything about that side of this little boy's identity with him. She just does not want to do it. And I'm wondering if there would be any friction if teachers do it.
That's a great question. That's a great question. Emma, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'd really love to see teachers facilitating conversations class-wide, particularly with younger children that are not specifically calling anybody out or centering on anybody specifically, but actually kind of helping children understand how to express themselves, also ask questions in a respectful way, and like discover identity, and understand mixedness, because it's a conversation that we're not having. I think it's more about introducing that conversation rather than specifically signaling out one child and saying, right, I'm going to focus on you to help you understand or explore your identity if there's a worry there about perhaps what a parent might feel, and that will then just naturally kind of come out, I think, in a safe way. In terms of talking about race, I think, this is a nationwide issue at this time, and it's really bad that, we're regressing in that sense. Other than to say that we have to find ways to have the difficult conversations and support our colleagues, friends, people that we think might struggle with it by, helping them with resources or the ways that we know how to do this. I think it's imperative that we push on.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree.
I see
Because
Andy's waving. Oh, sorry, Ruth. I thought you finished. Go on, go on.
no, I was just going to say, because there will be children who are going to at one point be conscious that they're being experienced by other people as not white. And that will come as a shock if they haven't had any sort of warning of that, you know. And if there are parents where they're sort of saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter, it's not important, you know, we don't see color, everything's fine," the world is suddenly going to hit that child in the face, because unfortunately, any mixed person is conscious of that fact that they're always seen as not white
Mm,
if
mm,
they're half white.
mm. Final comment from Andy before I wrap up. Andy, what do you want to add in?
I think schools have to jump in. I'd rather. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, I would rather jump in and get it wrong than just keep quiet. I think in this climate currently, we absolutely have to talk about this. You know, we've got a reform government potentially in 4 years, 3 years. You know, we've got to talk about this. You know, so I would be using this in staff teams. You know, there's exercises in here you can talk about. You know, have a staff meeting. You know, just get around. It's all about dialogue. You know, better to talk and get it wrong than just to keep quiet. You know, to dialogue, ask questions. That's what my advice to schools is.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So we do need to wrap up. So I'm going to say a massive thank you to Louise, to Andy, to Benny, to Dom, to Claire, and to Cheney, but most importantly to Emma, for creating and publishing a beautiful book, for sharing quite a lot of herself in the process. I know I get the vulnerability of you putting yourself out there and leading this conversation. I think it's probably the start of a number of books you might be publishing for children. But thank you very much. And we will get this recording edited and then we'll send it out with signposting to some of the groups and organisations and charities and resources that the educators on the call are involved in, plus the PDF that Cheney and Claire talked about. But final words from you, Emma.
I'd just like to say thank you so much to everybody for coming and also for sharing your feedback and your thoughts. It's really great for me to have that, because I think, you know, you spend as a writer a lot of time in isolation just getting it all down. So it's really, really important and validating for me to hear, especially from you as educators who are, you know, there on the ground with children. And so, yeah, just my thanks. Thank you so much.
Well, let's keep the conversations going. So please do go and log out, get out of your offices, get home, get the tea on, look after yourselves, and I'll be in touch with the recording in the next few days.
Thank you, Hannah.
Bye, everyone. Take care.